There's a new scum rising up angry in the sky. There's a new voice saying we're not afraid to die. Let the whole world make believe it's blind and deaf and dumb, but nothing can change the shape of things to scum. Let's talk about the SCUM Manifesto by Valerie Solanas. And this is written by the lady who attempted to assassinate Andy Warhol. She did not succeed. The front cover says, "Life in this society being at best an utter bore, and no aspect of society being at all relevant to women, there remains two civic-minded, responsible, thrill-seeking females only to overthrow the government, eliminate the money system, institute complete automation, and destroy the male sex." Okay. This book is funny but also astute at times, and it's like you can't really separate the two, which is, I think, how like really good comedy and satire should be, where there's enough truth in there that it makes you think, but there's enough absurdity in there that no one can accuse you of being too serious about it, in a way that they can really do much about, if you know what I mean. One thing I did notice in here is that, let's see, there were two parts that I've heard Doug Stanhope talk about. I don't know if he read this or not, but there were two particular points that I noticed that recur both in this book and in his act. The first one is the idea that pussy is sort of the driving factor of society, where, you know, men have to work jobs in order to make money, in order to, you know, secure the woman in order to obtain pussy, right? Her take on it is that men have to sort of bribe the women into, you know, spending time with them, and whereas Doug's is like, what does Doug say? Basically that, yeah, I guess Doug's is more like women are tricking men into paying union rates for their pussy. Anyway, okay, the other part that I've heard Doug also say is this concept that Valerie talks about here of unworking, where, you know, instead of dropping out of the work and money system, because when you drop out, all it does is leave other people in charge. What she suggests instead is that you get jobs and screw things up from inside, you know, sabotage, give things away for free, etc. And Doug has said things like that as well. Let's see. One thing in here that I don't understand, she says, on the topic of prejudice, racial, ethnic, religious, etc., the male needs scapegoats onto whom he can project his failings and inadequacies, and upon whom he can vent his frustration at not being female. And the vicarious discriminations have the practical advantage of substantially increasing the pussy pool available to the men at the top. I don't understand how discriminating vicariously increases the pussy pool to anyone. I really don't get that. If anyone understands that, please let me know. She does have a thing in here where she sort of says, like, men want to be female because they're, like, lacking in, you know, good qualities or whatever that females possess that men don't. This kind of reminds me of what Eliza Schlesinger says. You know, everyone wants a woman. They either, you know, want to have a woman, be a woman, fuck a woman, appropriate the way a woman is, whatever. And Valerie does talk a little bit, or she does talk several times about how sort of the gays sort of put on a feminine affect, and and she's kind of positive on the whole drag thing. She's sort of like, guys who do drag are kind of more acceptable than other guys. Let's see. There was another point I wanted to make. Oh yeah, but the one thing she really doesn't, like, for me, when I think about, why would someone want to control a woman, have a woman, it's like, because women have the reproductive capacity. If you want to have children, if you want to populate the earth with, your own personal army, you have to have a woman to bring them through, right? To me, that is the key of why, people might want to control women, to make sure that, she's having only your children, and that you can, populate, etc. But Valerie really doesn't talk about that. She talks about, reproduction in terms of, like, science can now make children without males being present, and we can also do it in a test tube, so we'll just, make the babies in laboratories and make only girls or something like that. But yeah, she misses that point that I think is important, that it's the reproductive power that is kind of particular to women. And there's one quote here I want to also put here, because she says, like, scum, it's a state of mind, right? Women who have the state of mind are known as scum, and then men who can get into the state of mind can be part of the men's auxiliary, right? So they can be sort of okay. It says, being in the men's auxiliary is a necessary but not a sufficient condition for making scum's escape list. It's not enough to do good, to save their worthless asses. Men also must avoid evil. A few examples of the most obnoxious or harmful types are rapists, politicians, and all who are in their service, campaigners, members of political parties, etc., lousy singers and musicians, chairmen of boards, breadwinners, landlords, owners of greasy spoons in restaurants that play music, great artists, cheap pikers and welchers, cops, tycoons, scientists working on death and destruction programs or for private industry, practically all scientists, liars and phonies, disc jockeys, men who intrude themselves in the slightest way on any strange female, real estate men, stockbrokers, men who speak when they have nothing to say, men who sit idly on the street and mar the landscape with their presence, double dealers, flim-flam artists, litterbugs, plagiarizers, men who in the slightest way harm any female, all men in the advertising industry, psychiatrists and clinical psychologists, dishonest writers, journalists, editors, publishers, etc., censors on both the public and private levels, all members of the armed forces, including draftees. LBJ and McNamara give orders, but servicemen carry them out, and particularly pilots. If the bomb drops, LBJ won't drop it, a pilot will. In the case of a man whose behavior falls into both the good and bad categories, an overall subjective evaluation of him will be made to determine if his behavior is, in the balance, good or bad. So yeah, she does also have a thing in here about culture and art, and how the male tries to make great art and culture, and it's really a bunch of bullshit that's meant to confuse women, and then she shot Andy Warhol, and I don't know much about Warhol, but I'm not attracted to Warhol. I'm not attracted to his work. Apparently his films might have been interesting, and he put her in several of his films. Like, this talks about what happened. It's like, he put her in some of his films. She was a writer. She wrote this thing. She was, selling it on the street. She wrote a play called Up Your Ass about, like, a sex worker. She wanted him to produce it. She typed it up by herself, and when she handed it to him, he was like, "Oh, did you type this yourself? You should come type for us." Like, motherfucker. And then when she asked him to return her only copy of the play that she had typed up and given him, he wouldn't give it back. And And then she made some kind of contract with, I guess, his friend, which then she started reading into too much, and she started believing that he owned all of her writing, and it was a mess. And she was apparently diagnosed as like paranoid schizophrenic, which I will say, I don't think this book mentions a single time that she was diagnosed with that. It does talk about how she went into institutions, at least once, particularly after shooting Andy. But yeah, this is it's an interesting book. I mean, I think everyone should write a manifesto once in their life. I bought this in part because I would like to write some type of manifesto myself. I'm not sure exactly what it'll be called or what it'll be about. But I will say, on an unrelated note, that Volume 1 of my Mermaids in Space novel is now to the point where I'm going to be printing advanced reading copies. Okay, so I do have a novel. I am working on it. It is going to be coming out relatively soon. It's a 3-volume. There's 3 volumes. And I'm going to be letting you know about that. So, what do you think about this? Another thing she also says is to loot, to drop out of the money system and just loot instead, which almost brings to mind the Gospel of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, where Mr. Henderson suggests that you get a band together and pillage. And yeah, I mean, she also talks about how so instituting complete automation, like we have the science and the technology to automate almost every job, so that people don't have to work those jobs, and so therefore we should just do that so that people don't have to plug into these jobs because we have the technology. Why should humanity have to do manual labor when we have created machines that can do it, right? Which then brings to mind Oscar Wilde's essay, The Soul of Man Under Socialism, where he says, humanity has come up with all these technologies, and these technologies that were created by humanity are then to be enjoyed by the whole of humanity, because, it's only in voluntary associations that man is fine, and you should only do work that is, gives you pleasure, So yeah, this was a slightly rambling discussion of this book, and there's still more to talk about, but I don't know what else to say without just reading this whole thing again and making notes. But it's inspirational, right? Okay, bye.